heavy metal song, and with some wonderful cuts to Rabbits in Distress, and a very successful campaign, I knew that I had to visit. And so I began establishing some ties, some correspondence to set up that visit, which took about 2 years for me finally to get there. It's in a very remote part of the American West. So that's how it originally came about. And I could elaborate a little more, but that maybe sets the scene, if you will.
That sounds great. So what did you kind of hope that people would take away from the film? Because it's definitely a very activist film, a very kind of leftist focused film. Did you have intentions in that respect?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that question. The film, for me, my objective here is I would say threefold. The first would be to bring some awareness to the very particular oil and gas pressures in the state of Utah and in this region, because for those of you who've never been, Utah is known for these very beautiful parks, and for many people who travel there, that's what they see. They see these stunning sunsets and rock formations, but they're very carefully manipulated and engineered through the road system to never see the extraction. So there's an agenda there to frame the American West around industry. My second intention is to suggest trespassing, is to put on the table direct action. And then my third agenda is to combine an activist film with experimental methods, because too often what I see, I think it's been changing in recent years, but for a long time, there's been this very unfortunate divide, I think, between what people used to call formal filmmaking and experimental filmmaking, different vocabularies for it, and a kind of environmentally inclined film or something. Again, I think that's changed a lot in the last few years, and I hope that my film participates in that conversation around a kind of formalism that can take up Earth defense.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's often a dichotomy between kind of form and content, and seeing those as quite separate things. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And I wanted to ask you as well about the form of the film, your kind of use of photochemical footage, and also the use of inversion as well. I wondered if that was a result of using eco-friendly processing, or if that was kind of an editing decision.
So the black and white footage,
yeah,
that you see there, yeah, that's high contrast black and white footage. So I regret to say that that's a traditional lab process. I just the other day was daydreaming of finally getting my hands into, say, using coffee to work with a photochemical film process, but in this case it's not. It's a bit more traditional, but it kind of vibes that way, I realize, in the way that the image behaves on screen. So to me, the decision to work with 16 millimeter is appropriate for something like landscape. There's so many associations I think people have with landscape and a kind of nobility of the image, or something like this, or different traditions of imaging the landscape in that way. And then the rest of it I shot on my iPhone. Some of the footage there at the end, and then also all of the kind of fly-by-night still images that you see in the film as well, kind of carefully cropped then and reframed in post to the aspect ratio. So it's a kind of a combination of like a very deliberate old school 16, and then completely fly-by-night DIY phone material, just because that's what I had in my pocket.
Cool. Just to remind those at home that you can submit questions as well on slido.com and the code 545971 as well. I also wanted to ask about, there's like kind of different sections that are maybe kind of unexpected in the film. So the section about Muhammad Ali, and also the kind of section at the end with the building of the kind of artworks around the animals. I wondered if you could talk about that a little bit.
Sure, sure. Let's see. First, the Muhammad Ali. So I have this notion that landscape disappears itself. It has this way of eluding us, human beings, and there's because of the kind of histories, certainly in painting, to some extent in film, it can erase specific histories, like specific industrial histories, actually. And while I was out there, when Muhammad Ali died, this was, to my mind, an interruption of a flow, of the appearance of timelessness. And so it became very important to me to mark inside of the film and the making of the film a kind of interruption of that kind of inclination almost of landscape to move toward timelessness. But then in addition to that, the excerpt that I pulled there is such a righteous condemnation of the military and empire and oil. And so my hope is that it just suggests some connections between U.S. empire and that more localized extraction. So that's what I was going for there. But when you make that move with the film with that kind of interruption, it's a move. So I'd love to hear anyone's reaction to it, or your reaction as well. But thank you for asking that. The ending of it is a bit more mysterious, because upon moving into the trespassing zone, the film moves through a different kind of energy, through the forge, into these animal forms. Because to my mind, one of the things I want to keep in mind in making a film like this is that the future is unknown. And so while I might want to call for direct action, the world is to be determined. So I'm trying to sort out a certain kind of call for action, while holding a lot of space there at the end, I hope, for animal forms in particular, through that energy process that we might not even understand.
Absolutely, and when I saw the Muhammad Ali section, I was thinking about solidarity and the kind of like ways that often in the American story there's this idea of these struggles being separate, and actually linking those, I think, was a really interesting kind of editing decision. And so it's interesting to hear your perspective on it.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I could say a little more there, because it really comes to the foreground there with this one shot from this mining museum that I went to, with this kind of like row of miners, which is repeated in the film, and so I think that it also sets up a question, in a sense, for white laborers, and a union history in the United States, which has with it a history of racism too. So I'm happy that you picked up on those aspects of solidarity, which is multidimensional, I think, and brings with it questions as well as something strident.
Absolutely. I think we may be running out of time. We only had 13 minutes, I think, was the amount of time. Right. But thank you so much for your responses and for your film. And yeah, hoping to see more of your work. Thank you.
I thank you very much for your time and your attention. I'm so pleased to be in the festival. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.